and I am Bridget Borsdorf, licensed professional counselor here at the Bridge Center. I also am a parenting coach and therapist who works specifically with children and parents who are experiencing things much like we're talking about today. So today's topic for our monthly webinar is on aggression and what it really means. There's a lot of kids in this world I know who experience aggressive symptoms, and a lot of parents are kind of struggling with ways to work with this or handle this. So today I want to really dive into that topic and get a good sense of not only what those behaviors mean, but also simultaneously be able to kind of support you around that. So I'd love to go ahead and get started. And get the screen shared here. Super. So hopefully everybody can see this. So this is the topic today is what aggression really means, a free training for parents. Like I said before, my name is Bridget, and I'm a licensed professional counselor here at the Bridge Center. And I work specifically with children and parents to kind of minimize all sorts of symptoms, aggression being one of them. So I just would like to start by thanking you today for taking your time to join us and to get more insight and information on what these particular symptoms might mean for you and your child. And certainly would love to provide you with a little bit of background about me. I've worked with children all of my life, but specifically have worked within this center and in this capacity for the last 5 years, really trying to get a thorough sense of what parents are struggling with and to find effective resolutions to be able to minimize symptomology and all sorts of behaviors. And we've had a lot of success with this at our center that I started in 2012. And the main premise of our center is really to enhance the well-being of you and your child and your entire family. We know here that usually when one child's having a hard time, that can really transcend and carry over into other entities of your family life. And there's nothing more rewarding and exciting than being a parent. And so anything we can do as an organization and as therapists here to provide the invitation to all of you to be able to be the best parents you possibly can be, then we are all for that. So I'm really glad that you're here. And as one of the therapists and clinicians here, we really like to try to provide extended education to our parent community to help kind of mitigate and work with some of the symptoms on your own, because as parents, you're always going to know best. And we're just simply here to be able to offer a different lens and support you around making decisions that make sense for you and your family. So today, as we talk about aggression, I'm going to be offering some things I know from my experience that have been effective, and also some insight into what those behaviors mean. And I certainly offer the opportunity for you to take what means something to you and maybe leave the rest, or supportive of the whole thing, or provide us with feedback after this is over to let us know what worked and didn't work for you. Great. So with that being said, like I said before, if you have paper and a pencil and want to take notes during this particular seminar, I would highly advocate for it. I know it's one thing for us to kind of talk about these particular things, but it's another thing to really integrate it and apply it to your daily life. So I really encourage you to minimize your distractions. Hopefully you have the gift of your time and your energy, and perhaps moments without distractions of kids or this or that. So please take this time for yourself. That's the greatest gift you can give yourself, and really kind of hone in on the pieces that we're talking about today. I'm going to take some time at the end to answer any particular questions you have about this topic or any other topic. So know that will come. If there's things over the course of the webinar that are kind of speaking to you, feel free to enter them into the chat box on the side of your screen there. And I'll make sure to spend some extra time at the end addressing those. And then finally, I do have a very special invitation for all of you joining us this evening. And I highly encourage you to stay to the end to find out what that invitation is. Great. So with all that being said, let's dive right in. So the title of this webinar was, what excuse me, what aggressive behavior really means. So let's just kind of first talk about the things that we're going to cover. So today we're going to talk about what classifies as aggressive behavior. There can be many interpretations of this. We're going to also talk about what the meaning of aggressive behavior is. We're going to talk about emotions in relationship to aggression. And then what you all came for, as many of my parents feel, is always, how do I support my child who may be displaying these symptoms or something like these symptoms? So I hope to cover kind of the whole gamut here and helping develop your understanding around what this behavior is and what it means, what might be causing some of this behavior, and then similarly offer you some really specific strategies so you can begin this evening or tomorrow or when this behavior emerges, working with your child on those things. So let's talk about what qualifies as aggression. The first piece to really acknowledge here is I think there's, for each of us, varied forms, right? What I might consider to be a highly aggressive behavior might not be the same for you. And we can see all different scopes of this. So specifically from as minimal as just, giving a light shove, from here or there, to the most extreme form of being really physically violent and activated energy. So there's a whole scope. And I hope today to really offer kind of a generalized perspective, whether that is the most extreme form or maybe more subtle instances. I think all parents experience like subtle notions of aggression in every child. And what we're really trying to do in this dialogue is be really preventative about even those subtleties and how they can over time kind of emerge. So some of the most common forms that we see here at the center, or that parents bring their child to us for, is going to be something along the lines of their child is kicking, their child is hitting, their child is biting, their child is shoving, their child is pulling toys away from other kids. We also do see a large spectrum of older children who tend to have more aggressive tendencies, more violent tendencies, much more activated tendencies. So I'm going to here and shortly take you down kind of what's age appropriate in relationship to aggressive behavior and what we kind of see through development, and kind of give you more of a lens of what makes sense and doesn't make sense about that. The other thing we have to take into consideration when we're looking at kind of the qualities of aggression is, what has the child been subjected to, and then what's inherent. So we get into that nature versus nurture conversation. And some children I've worked with have been exposed to a significant amount of violence, which could increase their violent tendencies or their aggressive tendencies. Some children just innately kind of come out with this fight kind of sense of the world, and it could be a more inherent type of aggression. Either way, like I said, with the varied forms, we're still going to work with this the same way, whether it's been a situation of exposure to violent behavior or other kids at school or learning it from a friend, or it's been you just have one of those really strong-willed kiddos from the moment they came out of the womb, just kind of kicking and fighting. It doesn't change the scope of how we work with it. So let's walk through just briefly kind of aggression associated with age. So what we tend to see in the 0 to 2 range is easily upset, crying, resistant, just naturally agitated. And notice none of those particular symptoms maybe hit you like to say, well, that's not really aggressive, right? But what I want to try to paint a picture of here is kind of where this starts and how it can kind of change texture and change behavior over the course of time. So what we usually see is that even if at 0 to 2 the child isn't physically aggressive, that there's notions of that before we get to 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, right? So usually aggressive oriented kids are going to be from 0 to 2 more easily upset, typically crying, resistant to direction or feedback, and tend to be more agitated. In 3 to 4, we see all of the above symptoms, but they kind of take on a different look, and we start to get a little bit more engaged with actual contact, such as biting, hitting, kicking. Often we see kids with lack of spatial boundary. They have a really difficult time understanding where their body is and someone else's body is. 5 to 7, we see all of the above, including 3 and 4 and 0 to 2, in addition to becoming more verbally aggressive. So now we've moved from just being physically aggressive to offering more verbal indications, such as name calling, negative self-talk, really directing I hate you, or things like that towards whoever they're in contact with. When we get to 8 to 10, we see all of the above, but then this increases in physicality, but also can tend to lead to more destruction of self and destruction of property. So that means when we get to 10 plus, we have all of the above symptoms. And as you can maybe let your mind wander, the options here are endless, right? So 10 plus into adulthood, if these aggressive tendencies haven't been addressed or dealt with, we really can't live in the land of hoping they're going to grow out of it. There's a clear need that's being met here, which we're going to talk about next. And it's important to know that the possibility of all of these symptoms being amplified and increasing can now get even more physical, can now get more destructive, can now get more verbally aggressive as the child grows into teenage years and into adulthood. If you think about dealing with a 3-year-old who's hitting and kicking, much different experience than dealing with a 14-year-old that's hitting and kicking. So I want to paint this picture just to give you a sense, because we often see here at the center kind of the sense of hoping that the child's going to grow out of it, or that it's just a phase or something like that. And then we see the child at 12 or 13 when the child is now bigger than us, the child is now really entrenched in these particular strategies, and it becomes much more difficult to work with. So I kind of want you to kind of see the progression of how this is, that it can start, aggressive behaviors can start at 0 to 2 and not even show any signs of aggression. But once we proceed into 3 to 7, we're now hitting into an area where it's very workable, it's easily modified, we can do a lot of things to be able to support that child, and then also minimize the impact of the possibility of this child using that strategy when they enter into teenage and adult years. So I think it's important for us to kind of reframe aggression. So how do we typically look at this behavior? I think from a parenting perspective, we often look at the behavior and say, okay, my child's hitting another child. That's not okay. Or from the teacher perspective, which I spend a lot of time in the schools, we see another child hitting a child and we say, oh my gosh, that's not okay. So we often see aggressive behaviors and get instantly charged with, oh no, this is not acceptable. This needs to go away. We can't have a child hitting a child or biting a child or scratching a child. Like, we can't have that, right? So we tend to look at it kind of in a negative nature. And then what we try to do with this is we try to modify. So we'll say, no, don't hit, no, use safe hands, no, that's not very nice, no, that's not okay. And we really try to clue the child in to know that the behavior is not acceptable, but this often is either a temporary fix or will not work at all, because what's happening here is there's a need that's trying to be met. So we have to ask ourselves the question, what need is trying to be met, versus getting very distracted by the fact that in our culture, in our society, in the world of parenting, in the world of child rearing, that this is not acceptable behavior. So I offer to you just to kind of sit for a moment and think, okay, like, what is what other side could possibly be happening here if we kind of minimize our distraction of this behavior is not okay or not acceptable or not how we, make relationships? What could be on the other side of all of this? And what could that reframe be, so we don't get distracted by the behavior and we're not trying to modify the behavior, but we're actually kind of looking at what's behind all of this. And if we can kind of look at it from the lens of what's behind all of this behavior, we have a much higher likelihood of helping the child process through something and helping the child really kind of get it at the root versus just trying to modify what's going on. So I give you the answer here. And often when we see aggressive behavior, it is 100% of the time a strong need for connection. I would highly suggest writing it down that all aggression is a form of connection. So I can give you some examples of this. An example of this would be if my toy that I was playing with got taken by another child and I was upset about what had happened in that instance, my natural inclination as a human being is I have the desire to connect and say, hey, give my toy back. But if I'm in the stage of 3 to 7, those words probably don't come effortlessly because I'm just starting to get the hang of that. So, what I might do instead, which usually creates a much quicker reaction, gets my need met much faster, is to either aggressively grab that toy out of the other child's hand or push the child or shove the child or smack the child. And look, bam, needs met. Either got the toy back or the other child got rid of the toy or something's happened. And simultaneously, there's no greater form of connection than contact, physical contact, right? So there's a lot happening in the brain during these moments. And one is really that we're more reactionary and we tend to, especially when we're little, act more reactive in moments to get our needs met versus actually thinking it through. We don't have that cognitive ability just yet to really be able to process and really slow it down and really say, oh my gosh, can I get my toy back? I just am going to hit you and get it back. I'm going to get the need met. And so when we try to modify this behavior, which I see so many parents do of like, no, we don't hit, use your safe hands, what we're actually saying is that was wrong. It was not okay what just happened, and I'm not going to help you figure out a different way. So that sounds rather intense in nature, but if we often get stuck in modifying behavior versus actually seeking and understanding what the child's behavior might be saying, right? Might be saying, when the toy got taken away, I was really upset, I was really sad, and I was really disappointed. And I need some help processing that so that way I don't just hit or bite or kick or do whatever I do that gets the need met really fast. So this is just one example that I'm offering you of how the need for connection is being met in aggressive behavior. Another thing we see often is physical contact. I've worked with a lot of kids who tend to be very physically aggressive and very little, so like let's say 4, and be very physically violent. And all they really, really desire is to be held and cradled and rocked and soothed and to have contact met in a whole different way. So it's really important for you to understand this element that aggression is a form of connection and aggression is a form of contact. So in this effort for connection, we tend to find that aggression is really dysregulated. So rather than connection of saying, hey, I want the toy back, can I have the toy back, which would be the regulated response, the dysregulated form of connection becomes either too much energy, which is a fight or flight response, which is where we find hitting and kicking the most, or a freeze shut down, which could sometimes be a temper tantrum, meltdown, isolation, something like that. What we don't usually see in aggression is somewhere in the middle of that, which is what we call regulated. Aggression is usually always a response of some sort of dysregulation that has happened in the child's body. So dysregulation occurs when our brain is sent a distress signal from perceived threat, experience, or emotion. And the intention of this is to protect ourselves and be efficient. So if my toy got taken, it's going to cause a distress signal. It's going to feel like a threat, and I'm probably going to want to fight, which is where we see the aggression come out. An effort for my brain to work in a very efficient manner. So really, if we look at it from this brain lens, it all makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways of why children tend to go into that instantaneous reactionary place rather than finding a different way. And don't worry, we're going to talk about how to find a different way, but it's really important for you to kind of see what all is happening here in order to kind of shift how you're viewing the aggression. So you're not viewing it as bad and wrong behavior, that you're viewing it just as a response that's been created by the body and the brain. So also what we tend to find is dysregulation is caused by some sort of emotion. So examples of emotions are going to be mad, sad, scared, disappointed, loss, frustration. And those emotions are going to cause that distress response of too much energy or not enough energy. So aggression can be any emotion. So if the toy gets taken from me, I could be mad, I could be sad, I could be scared, right? And my reactionary response that might manifest itself in the form of aggression is really just a reaction to the unpleasant experience of the emotion. Most kids don't like to be mad. They don't like to be sad. Just like us as parents, we don't like to be mad or sad or scared. We don't like those. Kids don't like them either. And so they're going to act on those. And this goes across the board, really, for any symptom that your child might be experiencing. Sure, we're talking about aggression here, but we also can look at it in the bigger picture of really any particular symptom your child is experiencing is probably the reaction to an emotion that they're having. So if we go back to aggression as connection, aggression can be any emotion. It is our reaction to the unpleasant experience of the emotion. And as human beings, we are not hardwired to want to connect with our emotions, positive and negative. But what we are hardwired to do is to get some form of contact and connection in that experience. So aggression achieves this goal for us significantly, and it's very, very efficient for us. So how do we find a different way? Well, we know now that emotions create aggression, and the purpose of aggression is to aid us in processing the emotion. So I often tell parents, it's like, okay, your child's aggressive, not a pleasant behavior, not what you want. You don't want to call from school saying, oh, my child hit someone. This is not what we want. I get it. And when we look at aggression and say, okay, this is just our child's body telling us they're trying to process an emotion. And can I help them and teach them and encourage them to process the emotion in a way that creates healthy boundaries and high functioning and really good connection? And we're, as I said before, as humans, we're hardwired for connection and relationship, but we're not hardwired to know how to have that connection and relationship to our emotions. So our role as parents is to help our children understand what they're feeling in effort to reduce the behavior, and then everybody is much happier. So if I, as a parent, am going to offer my child options to be able to process what's behind the aggression, then I'm going to see a reduction in the behavior over time. 99% of the time, this is the case. I can assure you of this because I've seen it many, many times. So this is our funnel of emotions. And like I was talking about other symptoms, this is kind of our go-to for understanding where a child might fall. And if this isn't a resource that's of interest to you, I'm happy to provide this to you all so you can take a better look at it, perhaps if your child's experiencing other symptoms. It's really good just to get an energy perspective of where they might be. So as I said, aggression is not inclusive to be an activated energy, but those who act on aggression, it tends to be very activated, very anxiety, very scared-based energy. And so we want to help the child process what's the feeling and the emotion around scared or the emotion around mad to be able to create a different avenue for them to express that particular emotion. So we want you to learn emotional process. So in order to teach your child, right, you yourself are going to have to learn what the emotional process is and how exactly we do that. And just to get you on board, I want to give you some sense of how this could benefit your child. So we have found that if a child knows how to process their emotions, they're going to have higher academic achievement, increase awareness for boundaries, increase social skills, ability to understand cause and effect, increase confidence, ability to listen and focus, decrease peer conflict, reduction in illness, ability to handle stress, more productivity in class, increased problem solving skills, independence and autonomy, and have this amazing skill to be able to teach others how to regulate. It's amazing to witness and watch this. Okay. So the benefits to you, because there's benefits to you here as well, is that it's going to deepen your understanding of your kids and what they're really struggling with, right? Rather than us getting caught up in the aggressive behavior, we get this whole new reframe of saying, okay, that aggressive behavior is just a little reminder for me to know my child's struggling with something else and what's behind that and how can I help them. So I'm going to understand my kids more fully. You're going to lessen your complexity of concern. So rather than making this really dramatic and really intense and really overwhelming and say, oh my gosh, my kid is going to be, super defiant for the rest of their life, we can really stay in the present moment and say, okay, we can take a deep breath and say, my kid is just trying to process this emotion and how can I help them? It's going to increase your efficiency and productivity. You're going to have less meltdowns, less outbursts, less conflict with their peer relationships, less challenge, school phone calls, whatever it is that you're experiencing, and therefore be able to have more ease. And then finally, it's going to enhance your own relationships and your own connection. I can't say this enough since I've begun doing this work. My relationships and my ability to connect with others has skyrocketed just by being able to have a relationship with my own emotional experience. So here we go. This is the how-to. Suggestions for you to manage the aggression. First suggestion is to understand what triggered the aggression. So what was the root? What was the cause? Was it that the toy got taken away? Okay. Yeah, could understand. Have you had something taken away from you and felt pretty upset about that? So you get to understand what triggered the aggression and put yourself in the shoes of that situation. And I always like to kind of open this up in terms of this isn't to you, it's just a toy, but to your child, it might be the end of the world. And we have to understand that. Second, you're going to reflect the feelings your child might be having around that. So whatever happened, and reflect your own feelings about the situation. And then you get to suggest to the child to find a different way or offer other ways to express the emotion. And then finally, you're always going to take safety into consideration. If there is a high intensity and volatility here, we're not suggesting that you must play out these 4 strategies in those moments. If things don't feel safe or that your child's going after their sibling or something like that, we're going to take that into consideration. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper so you have a thorough understanding of how you're going to implement this. Oh, but first, more benefits to you, just in case you weren't on board yet. We're going to offer you, in being able to do this, you're going to find less fatigue, less stress, increased social engagement for yourself, less frustration, less likely to burn out as a parent, a deeper connection with yourself and anyone you come in contact with. No doubt in my mind, guaranteed. So this is the easy way. We call it the 10-step. And there's not because there's 10 steps, but because there's 3 and it spells out 10. It's think, engage, and name. Here we go, think. So you're going to think about, if your child's being aggressive, you're going to think about whether you want to work with this situation. You have a choice point. You get to decide as parent if you want to participate and support them in an emotional process, or if you prefer, you're feeling tired, you're feeling disengaged, you don't have the desire, you get to decide and say, I'm going to sit this one out and just wait it out, right? So you get to make the choice here to act or not to act. I think when we talk about emotional process, parents then feel like, okay, I must do this all the time. You're human, your capacity does not allow that. So really understand that you have a choice, okay? So you're going to think if you want to decide to work with it or not. You're then going to engage. So child's hitting, kicking, biting. You're either going to get on their level, or if they're being really aggressive, you're going to hold them. You're going to hold their arms and you're going to cradle them like a little baby if you can. If they're 14, you can't do this. You definitely can make eye contact, and you definitely can hear what the child is saying, expressing, and experiencing. So if they have negative self-talk or they're saying, I hate you, you're going to say, yep, I hear you. Biggest mistake we make here is personalizing this, right? When our child starts going off verbally on us, we tend to let that integrate into our beings and bodies and say, oh gosh, I must be a terrible parent. And that's not what this is. This is your child saying some things and you're in a moment and it's intense. We've all said things we don't mean. So I really want you to practice that. I'm not going to allow this to infiltrate my brain and me to anticipate this as truth, because now you're going to find yourself dysregulated and not be able to handle the experience. So you're going to advocate for what you're hearing the child say. And you're also going to be present with yourself and the child, of letting them know that you're there and you're not going anywhere. Write that down, that when you engage, you're going to let them know you're there, and no matter what they say or what they do, you're not going anywhere. Then finally, you're going to name your own feelings. So if this is the 8th time in a day that you have seen aggressive behavior or be experiencing aggressive behavior, you're going to say, wow, this is really frustrating. Like, oh, this is so hard, right? And name what you feel in relationship to what's going on. Or if you're getting hit or kicked, you're going to say, wow, ouch, this hurts. Does not feel good. This isn't how I want to connect with you. Sad, mad, name all of those feelings, okay? Regulating your own energy, taking deep breaths, being able to be present, walk your body around. The worst thing is you could sit and be still and not move and isolate, and you're going to disappear. And your point here is to engage and be with the child. And then finally, you're going to connect with them about the difficulty. There's no doubt in my mind that going through this 10-step is hard and challenging, and it's really important for you to let your child know how difficult this is for you, because then we've reached a whole new point of authenticity and congruency of your child seeing that this is hard for you too, and now they're not the only ones in the world, perceived, that are experiencing this experience. So things to remember here, as I said before, take safety into consideration, right? If this is too volatile, if it's too violent, if other people's safety are at risk, do what you need to do to protect that situation, right? Trust your gut, right? If you're not feeling energy or adequate to be able to help them through this, right? Perhaps you get to sit it out and say, this doesn't work, I'm not into this right now, or you call one of us to find out how you can do this more proactively and what you need to kind of break through to be able to get there. And finally, I really want you to know that you're not required to handle the emotional needs of your child all the time. You are simply their guide to offer them suggestions for their well-being. They get to trust themselves too, right? So at some point in time, your child will work through this, I can guarantee you. But as we went through the scope of development, I really, really encourage you, if you're seeing this in the early stages of their childhood, to work with it now, because it's so much easier than to let these symptoms kind of build up over time, because we're getting distracted by the symptoms and not addressing their particular need, okay? So the final thing I just want to say before I answer your questions is, if this work is something that's of interest to you and you really want to have more of a play-by-play, in-depth, really effective kind of strategy and plan to be able to work through these things and use your specific examples and your specific instances and process through that, we have a lovely, amazing group of parenting coaches and therapists here who work all over the world with parents to be able to support them through their most challenging times. And so I highly encourage you to go to the bridgecenterforplaytherapy.com/book online. And there you will find right now all of our offerings and services. And for those of you who have joined us evening, we are offering 4 sessions. You buy 2 sessions and you get 2 sessions free. So I can't tell you what can happen for you and your family in 4 sessions. I've seen incredible shifts and changes in a short duration of time, because our therapists and coaches here are so effective in this process. And we really love, more than anything, working hands-on with you to make your life more effective and efficient and fabulous. So please, please, please head over there if that's of interest to you. Or if you're not sure, we also offer free consultations. It's free, 30 minutes just to chat with someone to see what and how we might be of help. So you can certainly book that online as well. Great. So I'd love to just kind of step out here and see if there's any questions that I can answer from you, or anything that's kind of percolating after this discussion. I'm not seeing anything come up in our anything coming up in our broadcast here. So with that being said, we are here and we are available and we are wanting to support you. So if there is something that you feel like you would love to share with us, whether that's a success or whether that's something really difficult, please, please, please contact us. There's plenty of options on our website. Reach out to us and find ways that we can really help you be the best parent you possibly can be, and really find a way for your child to feel really good about themselves. So it is truly my honor to be here to support you in whatever capacity it is, whether it's live today or in the big picture, and you being one of our lovely family and friends. I'm so grateful to do this work and inspire you. So thank you. And any feedback is always welcome. Please reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next month for our next webinar. Take care. Bye-bye.